Hey everybody, I'm super excited to do an in the bag video for you today. I've actually never been happier with my bag than I currently am. I've spent a lot of time in the past weeks really fine-tuning everything and kind of diving into the numbers a little bit more, which I'll tell you about briefly. But very excited about my in the bag. Thought I'd share that with you. So a little bit of how I've constructed my bag. Is over the years I found out which discs feel the best in my hand as far as the numbers of the rim thickness, the width, and then the depth. And even maybe the height of the disc plays into it a little bit as well. But kind of diving in more past the speed and the turn, and some of those things will be important. But the idea is kind of like Bryson DeChambeau having equal length irons, to try and get as similar of a feel in my hand, even though the molds and the stabilities are a little bit different. So I think it's starting to work. I really am liking my accuracy improvement by having fine-tuned this over, especially the last couple of weeks. So with that said, there's a couple of brand new additions that I've been throwing in the field like crazy that have made it into the bag, and conversely, a couple things that are gone forever that I've had in my bag for a while. So I'm going to kind of jump right into that with you. We're going to start with the high-speed drivers, if I can get them out here. And what's unique about my high-speed drivers is that everything is a 12-speed or really close. So trying to really stay close to that 2.2 width rim. And so let's dive into that. So this first one is a Paul Macbeth prototype Kong. So this is my super beefy, wildly overstable into a 20+ mile an hour headwind, or something that I just want a massive flare. I don't throw it particularly far, maybe 380. I can get it to 400 if the wind is optimal, but this thing is just never gonna turn over. It's also not very replaceable. So probably when this disc dies, I'm going to probably replace that with the Spirit, which is a pretty cool, super wildly overstable. The numbers are the same there. So I've tested that. There's not a place in my bag for it right this minute. Also not really a need because I'm not throwing this a whole lot, but that's my as overstable as it gets. So then we get into my main go-tos. And I've got 3 different destroyers here. This is going to be my overstable destroyer, very, very overstable. And then my primary thrower, which is going to be kind of my beat-in signature Ricky. And then right now I've got this little factory second destroyer that I'm actually really liking. One minor little imperfection on the actual inside of the rim part, creating just a tiny bit more glide on it. I actually really bombed this disc. So I'm really excited about these 3 destroyers, but destroyers are a big part of my game, always have been for the 15 years I've been playing. So love my destroyers. Again, the specs on that are 12.2 on the rim width. I'm sorry, 2.2 on the rim width, and then that depth is 2.2. So whatever the stats are on that, love the destroyers, and a lot of my high-speed drivers are built around the destroyer width. So now we get into some new stuff, and I'm actually really liking this disc. Wasn't so sure, but the problem with me has been with a little bit slower arm speed than a lot of local and touring pros. I run into issues when I get into a headwind, right? Where the destroyers are still, stable and finishing to the left for me, and that's why I like them. They're gonna fight that headwind. But when I want something a little bit more neutral and staying straight without the hard finish, or maybe even slightly turning right in that, 10 to 12 mile an hour headwind, which we've had like every day this year, I'm gonna now be going to the Enigma. You guys, this disc is amazing. It's basically like a really beat up destroyer right out of the bag. So done a lot of research. The specs are almost the same. It feels exactly like a destroyer in your hand. But this guy is going to be able to hold up to that, 10-ish, 12-ish mile an hour headwind. And what it's going to do is it's going to turn into what I used to have bagged all the time, is a shrike. Shrikes are gone out of my bag forever. In the headwinds or gentle headwinds, they're useless. Also, the rim width was up there around 2.3, 2.4, creating some issues where I'd have some grip lock or early release with the wider rim. And so trying to eliminate some of those mistakes and those errors, this Enigma is going to turn into basically a Shrike for me. Much more stable than a Shrike, but be able to hold up in that headwind and then kind of give me the pretty dramatic turn, and then still be able to kind of finish more neutral. So the numbers on that are 12, 5, -1, and the 2. So it's almost exactly like a Destroyer with less of a finish, and I do feel like the turn is going to probably be closer to a -1.5. But I'm going to be using this Enigma a lot. Really a great driver. And then we get to where my actual Shrike replacement is. So on a calm wind, tailwind, 4 to 5 mile an hour headwind, something like that, I'm absolutely in love with Gateway and their Journey. You guys, these discs are awesome. So I have 2 of these Journeys. I've actually got 4 of them. I got a shout out to a couple of people as I go through my bag, because there's some pretty big influencers with the bag. Rex Rogers, big guy with the Journey. Had talked to him about it, fell in love with it, know that he's always the Gateway guy, but this Journey has a pulse. It's a pretty good pulse. One of the things I really like about this disc is it's actually an 11.5 speed. And the reason that they're actually doing that is scientific, in the fact that a Destroyer at a 12 speed is a 2.2 rim width, and an 11 speed, Wraith is a 2.0. So being a 2.1 rim width, just a tenth of a centimeter smaller than the Destroyer, it is actually classified correctly at 11.5. But for me, honestly, rim width does not translate directly to distance, nor does speed. A lot of characteristics that go into speed are going to be rim width primarily, but then also the bluntness of the disc. This isn't so much a speed lesson as it is an in my bag, but loving the Journey. Hyperglide. This is like my heartbeat Journey. It is a more stable Shrike. Basically, like the most stable Shrike you could find is basically what this Journey is. Still gonna have a turn, but this is gonna be one of my main bombers. If I have a tailwind, this thing's gonna go forever. And then one that's slightly less stable, if I get a really big tailwind, or really want to make sure I'm not finishing left, more of a big Anheuser kind of finish, this Journey is less of a heartbeat. Rex has also given me a couple of the Hyper Diamond Journeys that I need to field test a little bit here. But these guys are going to be a lot flatter with no pop, no heartbeat at all. So I'm pretty excited to try these things out. Could potentially get a roller on one of these, depending on what it is, depending on how stable they are. But really liking Gateway's plastic, and this is really that piece here. I do also have a turn at the far end of the distance driver, being that 12 speed as well. This turn is going to be my absolute maximum Anheuser the entire way, bombing, sweeping left to right disc. Absolutely useless in a headwind. Really not used a whole lot, but really kind of like the way the turn will fly. If I have to get to higher altitude, when everything kind of moves up. The other thing that's really important about my in the bag, I carry a few more discs than maybe most people, because I do throw with both hands. So my left arm is exactly 1 disc down from my right arm. It's not quite as strong. So this becomes important because I'm actually using my turn conceptually for that same thing that I use my Journey for right-handed. So I'm using my turn for that left-handed. So that's why I'm gonna go a click more understable than you'll find most people do that, because I do have to kind of have crossover with both arms, which is also why I carry a few more molds than most people. But again, conceptually all the same as far as the rim width, rim depth, everything is the same across the top line distance driver. So do have a turn. I'll use that left-handed actually a few times. So then we're going to go into my hybrids. This concept of trying to be uniform widths and stuff actually originates around my hybrids. Anybody who knows me will know that my signature go-to disc is the Ork. So I'm going to start at the understable, and then I'm going to move to the most stable here with my 10 speeds. So all of my hybrids are basically 10 speeds to really preserve that 2.0, 1.9 to 2.0 rim width. So I have more Orks than anybody you know. Probably safe to say outside of like the collector group. I know a bunch of the guys on there, Seth and some other people have more of them. They're kind of my crack dealers as far as Orks go. But my least stable Ork, one of my favorites, one of my good friends, is this Special Blend 2006 Buffalo Stamp Ork. Easily a $100 disc, when the market was hot, and I have some connections, maybe get a little bit less, but this guy is so amazing. And I love my Orks because they feel the best in my hand. I have the cleanest release with the Ork. They're just absolutely fantastic for anything that I want to start hyzer and stay hyzer. If I want to do big, giant, sweeping hyzers, but push forward and also flip to flat. Everything flip to flat basically in my life is going to be Ork related. So I actually have, 30 Orks. 10 of them are special blends, the 2006 special blends. But this is my least stable one. It's one that I can really throw on this angle and get that thing to get almost a flat and push up to 420 feet. Next one is going to be just a pre-flight number Ork. I don't carry any Orks that are flight numbered. They are kind of garbage, honestly. They don't fly the same at all. So all of my Orks are older. Any of you have seen in the bags from Nate Sexton when he was doing it, Greg Barsby, kind of the Ork utilitarian guys back in the day. That's basically my concept. I lived in New York for a few years, and that really long tunnel straight shot was so important there, where the Ork was just a part of daily life. So I still use them a lot here, but the bad part about the Ork is it just gets destroyed and cut down in the headwind. It's unusable. So that actually, for that concept between the Ork and the Shrike, just getting ripped apart in the headwind, is why I have changed my bag up. So I'm not going to be using the Ork quite as much as I normally am, which you'll see here later, but I absolutely love it in a tailwind or a calm wind or no wind. Really don't want to be throwing them in headwinds more than 5 miles an hour. Unless it's on just steep hyzer. So this one's going to be a little bit more neutral. This orange Ork is actually a primary lefty driver. So I will use this a lot left-handed when I'm trying to push, 350 to 380, kind of staying pretty straight. I can keep this really straight with just kind of baby finish. One of the great things about the Ork is there's not almost any skip off or flare or finish at the end. So really using the Ork left-handed quite a bit more than right-handed. Right-handed are going to be big hyzers where I have room to do that. My last Ork is this Special Blend 2006 Tulsa white original with an overdye. Makes it a little bit more rare and also more stable. So this is going to be basically all used for the same type of shot, just depending on varying levels of wind. That moves into my next one, which will phase out of my bag, but right at this moment, the way that I'm kind of developing things and bringing in some new molds, there's a couple of key pieces here that will phase out forever. But right now I've got this pretty awesome 2006 special type of plastic. I'm not 100% sure it's a special blend. I think it is. It's slightly different than Star. It's not exactly like my special blend Tulsas, but it's a Starfire. This Starfire is basically like the most stable orc you can get. Can hold up to a little bit more headwind, 7 miles an hour. I mean, we're not talking dramatic headwinds that'll get eaten up also. It also doesn't go quite as far as my orcs. So it has a pretty unique flight. This will get phased out by my next disc, but I'm liking this right now for very, very straight. Also a low finishing disc. So it does kind of make it appealing when I have to stay straight, maybe a little bit left, but not flare away. So I like the Starfire. Old molds, I'm old school. Orcs and Starfires, I know I'm probably the only one you know. The next one, I got a shout out to Marty Capella, and then also, you know, via Marty, but also Pete Ulibarri, as far as the Discraft Annex. I know there's an Onyx out there too, so some people call this the Onyx, but as far as the rim specs go, they're like the exact same as the Starfires and the Orcs. Really right at that, you know, 1.9 or whatever it is, and 2.1 rim depth. But this is, or the 1.1 rim depth, 2.1, 1.9 wide, 1.1 deep. The Annex is fantastic. I'm really falling in love with this disc quite a bit. I'm a big 10-speed thrower, which is why I have, you know, a bunch of Orcs, Starfires 10-speed, Annexes 10-speed. A lot of glide, and it splits the gap perfectly between my last one, which is the Invictus. And I got to shout out Reed for the Invictus because it's absolutely awesome. But this is basically splitting the difference between, you know, the Starfire, Stable Orc, and the Invictus. The Invictus is going to finish, you know, basically as a much faster Firebird, is what that is playing for me, like a Stable Destroyer in between that and a Firebird for me. You know, if I'm throwing a Destroyer, I'm going to get that, you know, out there around 420 in a neutral wind, where this guy's going to be closer to 395. And my Firebirds are going to be really closer to 365, 370. So love the Invictus, but the Annex is amazing also. And that kind of wraps up the 10 speeds. So moving into my fairways, I'm kind of weird. My fairways are all 9 speeds. I really hate and have grip issues with the 7 and 8 speed discs. Particularly as far as rim width is concerned. I want to stay away from basically 1.5, 1.6, 1.7. There's where I'm having some sort of in-between mid-range feels, in between hybrid rim depth issues. So I do kind of skip those and cut those out on purpose, which is fine. Having a little bit of a slower arm speed. I've also been a really good mid-range thrower. It's one of the strengths in my game, I think. So I keep my fairways a little bit faster. I can also throw left-handed, which will cut off some distance as well. So I have that capability. So most stable one, it's going to be the Cap Wrap. This thing is amazing. It's a huge thumber disc. Now I have a thumber. I use it all the time, which is why I carry a few Firebirds. Lots of different kind of Firebirds, and also the Captain's Raptor. This is basically unbackhandable for me. Unless I am just trying to absolutely crank over a very short 270 foot flex line. I'm going to be using this as my fast forehand flex. So I don't have a super big forehand. That's why I throw left hand. But when we start to get into under 300 feet, that's where my lefty backhand kind of isn't as strong, but my righty forehand comes into play. So when we get under 300, I don't really have a lefty mid-range game. That's where righty forehand comes into play. So this is going to be basically in place of my maximum distance lefty mid-range is going to be where I start my righty forehand. And that's where the Cap Wrap is going to be one of my best to flex a righty forehand. But thumber is phenomenal. Big old throw that's going to pan right to left. and just stay on it. It is not going to turn back over. It's going to be coming in, finishing glide plate. It's fantastic. Love the cap wrap. Next one, I've got 3 Firebirds, Star Firebirds, just different levels of stability. This white one's actually kind of unique, but this orange and orange yellow one are very stable, like really stable. Not a tremendous amount of distance with them, but I can throw them right hand, left hand. You know, I'm going to be right there at about 300 feet left-handed with these things, which pretty unique and needed for lots of holes. But I'm going to be at like 330 to 350 maximum righty backhand with the Firebirds. But love these Firebirds. This one is almost like an FL right now. It's got a little bit of a pop top, which is very unique for Firebirds. These ones are board flat, but this has got a little bit more dome and hence a little bit more glide and is a little straighter, which is actually pretty cool. But honestly, all that's making it right now is an Onyx. So this isn't used a whole lot. Where this is coming into play though, is it's a pretty unique thumber that is going to kind of flip back. So great thumber disc. These are all doing different things as thumbers. These are my primary thumbers. Like my number one go-to thumbers, this Firebird, these 2 Firebirds. But there are a couple of thumbers we'll throw this one. Next one down is going to be a Thunderbird, right? A little straighter, not as much finish as the Firebird, but really liking the Thunderbird. It's the Jeremy Colling one. Pretty awesome. This is going to be my Firebird left-handed, right? And my Firebird's basically going to be a Justice, if you will, left-handed. So that's where this comes into play a lot too, is my lefty Firebird, but I also use this on a lot of shots, you know, righty backhand. Can fight the wind a little bit as well. So this becomes a little bit straighter there. And then there's going to be a significant gap on the understable side of my bag from fairways. Don't really need it. That's where I can throw higher speed drivers left-handed to get to that spot. So I've got a Roadrunner for rollers. That's kind of what I'm using for rollers. That's, you know, a 9-speed, very understable disc. But for anything that I need to move left to right, that's where I'm going to throw, you know, either an Onyx or an Invictus or even a Starfire, and lots of Orcs left-handed to get into that maybe, you know, righty fairway type of thing. So that wraps up my fairways. And now I get into one of my favorite parts of the game, is the mid-ranges. So there's a new little piece of my bag here as far as rim width is concerned. And these are basically my mid-range hybrid discs. And I'm absolutely in love with both of them. They're absolutely fantastic. So there's only 2 of them, just to kind of, one is more stable and one is a little bit more understable, but it's a very specific shot. This is a tunnel shot at about 330 to 345. You know, think of Vista 16, you know, shots like that where I've got double Mandos. I've got to stay straight. I don't want any finish away one way or the other. And that's going to be Latitude's River Pro. So this is kind of like a hybrid between the fairway driver and the mid-range. To me, it feels right-handed like a mid-range, and then in my left hand it actually sets up to where this is the slowest disc that I feel comfortable throwing left-handed. So pretty awesome. Basically, the River Pro is going to be, yeah, I'll have to talk about my other mid-ranges first, but this is kind of like my Verdict, but faster. It's 20 to 25 feet further than my Verdict, but basically on that same line, between my Compass and my Verdict, on that same line. So love this. And then the less stable, the more understable version of that, which can be neutral because I can put it on a little bit of a hyzer and get it to flip to flat, is Axiom's Crave. So kind of give Jordan Castro a little shout out here. This is my my shout out to that world. But I love the Proton plastic. To me, the over mold transition has always bothered me. with the other plastic. I can't remember what it is, but it is almost seamless in the Proton plastic, so I really like that. But what's awesome about this disc is it's a 6.5, 5-1, and both this and the River Pro are 1.8 width rims. So that's what's super unique, is that they lose a lot of their speed because of the bluntness of the disc. So it kind of resists the wind a little bit more, creating a lower speed like a mid-range, which makes me be able to trick myself into feeling like a mid-range and not in that terrible, I've always thrown T-Birds and, you know, T-Bird 3s really poorly. I'm not a good 7 and 8 speed thrower, so to me these 6 speeds are fantastic as kind of like the fast end of my mid-ranges. So love these two discs. I will use them on straight shots quite a bit. All right, then into the actual true mid-range section here. Anybody who's played with me before knows that I live and die by my Justice. Love this thing. It's my forehand flex utility, 250 feet, left to right, guaranteed. Upshot genius with the forehand flex with the Justice. I've also put another one in the bag, which is this really, really sick patriotic stamp Wysocki Justice. It's slightly less stable than this other Lucid Justice, even though it's Lucid as well. But the Justice is just one of the most overstable mid-ranges ever. You know, I can really force it over and know it's not going more than 280 feet and know exactly where it's going to be every time. Being a baseball player and kind of turning my wrist forehand, turn all you want with the Justice, it's coming back. Next click down is going to be my Hornet. This disc is kind of unreplaceable right now. I think a off-the-shelf Hornet is going to be a little bit more stable, which will be useful. It's kind of what this Justice is doing right now. But this Hornet is a 2006 special blend as well. Hornet, so it's a little bit more rare. It's pretty awesome. It's the Buzz OS with more glide. So really love this Discraft Hornet. Next click down is going to be the Verdict, one of my big go-tos. I love dynamic and Discraft mid-ranges. It's all I'll carry. But if you study the rims between the Hornet and the Verdict and the Compass and the Buzz, which are coming here, the profile's almost all the same. It's also very similar to the Harp. Beadless, very blunt. The Justice is a little different because I'm not backhanding it too much. I'm forehanding it, so the bead doesn't bother me on the Justice, but this Verdict is fantastic. The Verdict and then my Compass is the straighter version of the Verdict. I can't throw these things really further than 300 feet. So that was why I needed the Crave and the River Pro for that 330, 340. These things are going 300 feet. That's what they do. Very dependable. Love them. Lots of glide. Compass is a great disc also. And then the understable side of my bag are currently extremely unreplaceable. Extremely, extremely, extremely unreplaceable. Maybe the only idiot you know that throws a first run Buzz for my understable turnover Anheuser type of shot. Don't use it a whole lot, to be honest. It's not a shot that I find myself throwing a whole lot. With that shot, I'm probably replacing it with a forehand Justice. So don't use it a whole lot, but when I need to do a really high, dramatically left to right moving shot and the Justice isn't going to have the glide or be able to get over there, that's where this is going to come into play. And then this 2014 limited edition Color Shift Z-Buzz is a click more stable. It's kind of got a rainbow foil. Click more stable than the first run. So almost done with this video, you guys. I do not throw putters very much. I'm not a putter thrower. I will dial down my mid-range game for upshots. So I don't like to throw, you know, Conrad style putters. That's just not my game. So I've actually only got 3 different molds of putter. I'm very weird. I've done it for years and years. And I'll shout out to Craig Henninger, as these are still my old Craig's disc, you know, tournament harps. That's what I putt with. That's my primary putter. And when I'm dialed and I'm remembering the things I'm supposed to remember, this thing is cash money inside 40 feet. I really love to step putt. The harp being, you know, not a lot of velocity on my putt. I like the harp because I know that it's not gonna go gliding forever past. It's also stable. My miss is to the right, so its stability is able to kind of correct my natural miss, which I really like with the harp. I'll also use these on really short up shots, you know, 220, you know, 200 feet or less. It's very stable, right? It's gonna be a verdict, a slower verdict. Love that harp. You know, obviously Ricky's throwing them all over the place. These are, you know, even before Ricky's first run with Latitude. That's how old these things are. I love these harps. These are my primary tournament harps. And then my main short, straight Anheuser approach shot disc is the Berg. Played a lot with this, you know, in the last 2-3 months, and the best thing about it is you cannot throw it far. You can't do it. I cannot throw it further than 200 feet. It is an absolutely phenomenal stall disc where you can come in nose up, distance control. Also that subtle, maybe 20-foot moving left to right, Anheuser, absolutely awesome. Love the Berg. Cataplast has really nailed it with this disc. If you haven't played around with it, do it. You can throw it straight, it's fantastic. And you can give yourself really good runs at the basket, knowing it is not gonna go flying back past it. So I've clanked a lot of baskets with the Berg in the short amount of time I've been throwing it, but I really like it. And then I have just a super beat-in AVR that I'm using for jump putts, really outside 40 feet, you know, 40 to 70 feet. That's kind of where this jump putt is. I actually really like this AVR to stall on death putt runs, where I'll do that aggressive stall shot to get it above the cage, but then it's only 5 feet past the basket if I have that ability to do that safe run shot. It's actually one of my favorite shots to do with that putter shot. I've holed out a bunch of shots with this AVR. But you guys, that's my bag. Thank you for sticking with me for as long as I did. A lot of different molds, a lot of different great disc companies out there. And I think the takeaway is really understanding your release angles and being able to feel comfortable when you release that, so that it is repeatable and consistent. And I think that's the biggest takeaway with my in the bag, why I'm happiest with it now than I've ever been, because everything feels very similar in my hand between molds. So appreciate you guys. See you out there.